ladies and gentlemen, you know, sometimes you're walking down the street, and I say it is funny, you're walking down the street and you see people that you have no idea who they are. If you look around right now with me, wherever you are, you'll see people, you have no idea who they are. But one thing which is profound, they are sitting on, or they have within them, explosive dreams, explosive visions. And that is funny, but also very powerful. And I find it very intriguing because, and that's one of the reasons why I always say, never underestimate any person that you see. Get to understand who they are, what they're about, because you never know explosive dreams which is in them. And guess what? And this is what is interesting. There is an explosive dream inside of you and every single person. But what we need to do is fan that flame. Use that ember and fan it into a flame, because that is powerful. So ladies and gentlemen, as I always say, don't go with the flow.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and hope you're well. And as I start the show tonight, I'm just making sure I get all my guests to make sure that they're in. Yep, they're coming in. Everyone is coming in. Yep, everyone is in. Get their mics. Okay, guys, can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
Keisha, David, good. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I want to thank you so much for joining us on the late one tonight for an exciting show with a full pack panel. I would say the resident geezers are here. What is geezer? I don't know. If anybody want to object, but you sue me later for that as well. You know,
we say mate up north, mate.
Is it? I wanted this show today with friends, good friends, because I find that sometimes when we're having these discussions offline, realize that it is best to do it online. So I said, guys, stop. Let us go online tonight at 10 o'clock. Yep. Got Dr. Burton straight from work, you know what I mean? And Keisha and Keima Allen. I don't know if you can distinguish. Oh no, you can, because their name is there. I'm going to twist you guys up later. I should have actually done that, you know. So we're going to talk today about a few different topics, and one is going to be on COVID. You can realize there's a lot which is happening on COVID, and secondly, we're going to talk about Hong Kong. Hong Kong actually is bringing. I think the government is inviting over 3 million people from Hong Kong to come back to the UK. What's that going to happen? Jobs? Europe, Brexit, there's some implications there. And also we're going to talk about Priti Patel. And you may have seen on the news this crime thing whereby a lot of people have been arrested. They've gained a lot of money as well. And also the impact of jobs at the same time regarding COVID, because you have heard about a few major household names. When you go to the like Waterloo or different stations, I think it's Delicacy or whatever, one of those upper crust. Is it upper crust or tough crust? Upper crust. Yes. I can know the people who travel. I was just testing them, you know. They're also closing down part of Cafe Rouge and all those places. So it's a very interesting time we're in. And just as we're about to ease the lockdown, ease in the process, I was surprised today when I saw that there was Prime Minister's press conference. I thought it was done. David, let's go first. What's going on with COVID-19? I thought that guy went. Didn't he go?
No, it's not. The ghost of COVID lives on.
I thought, is he gone? Is he gone?
Still here, still rampant, still causing chaos. So, I mean, a lot has occurred since we last spoke, but I think, you know, the top three things really to talk about today would probably center on, start at Leicester. Let's start with Leicester, because obviously, in regards to Leicester, they've obviously gone into lockdown, and it's been an isolated lockdown. And I think I spoke to you about this a few weeks back, that my feeling was that at some point in time, you would have regional lockdowns in regards to COVID and the detection of the infection rates that are taking place. So it's been found that Leicester is far and above the sort of national average, and the next best or next worst performing city, unfortunately, in regards to rates, is that of Bradford, but they're nowhere near close to a lockdown at present. And so that's the first thing to really say. I think it's interesting that the government has taken this stance now to sort of to close Leicester. It'll be interesting to see what their rationale is in terms of the infecting rate, because a lot of the cities and countries up and down, a lot of the cities up and down the country have escalated in terms of number of cases. But you have to remember this. There's a couple of things you have to remember, that the number of cases that have increased are small to few, and the national average itself hasn't really gone up. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that in terms of the increase in cases, it is quite small, relatively speaking. And the things that have happened, obviously, to influence that are that we are now going out and getting back to work. So the affected groups tend to be the over 75s, which we've known about for a long period of time, but also those are the working class age. So because we are now mixing, we're now mingling, we're going back to work, we're socializing, we're going out to places of shopping areas, and also obviously on the July 4th, restaurants and bars will be opening up as well. That mixing of that particular group will afford a greater number of cases. And that's to be expected. It just makes sense. We've gone from a period of isolation to a period of mixing. So I think in terms of people being affected, we're not seeing a spike in the number of people who are attending hospitals. We're not seeing a spike in the number of people who are unfortunately passing away from the disease itself. So I think we've got to really place a good level of context in relation to what we're seeing at the moment. I'm not a fortune teller, and I'm not a modeler, but at the same time, I want there to be a realization about what's going on at this moment in time. And we just have to watch the numbers. We just have to see what happens in that respect, in regards to regional lockdowns. I think the other two things I just wanted to touch on in regards to COVID are obviously education. The education minister talked today about plans and effects to get kids back into school, and I think that's a big positive step in that regard. We obviously need to have safe environments for our kids to get back to school, but education matters hugely. What we don't want to have is, and just like COVID has shone a light on the disproportionate effect across race and across socioeconomic backgrounds, etc. We don't want COVID to shine a light on the disproportionate effects that may well manifest themselves in regards to education. Those that have been able to do very well, and those that unfortunately the state cannot protect, not doing very well, because that will have generational effects going down the line. So education is key. We need to make sure our schools are safe before getting kids back into, and I think we need to have obviously a plan. Silvan, so you're going to say?
Just want to do something. I just want to pick up something there, because I just want to make sure that people are hearing something. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the late one tonight. My name is Silburn Sidil. I've got my two guests, which is Keima Allen and Keisha Allen, and also Dr. David Burton. And what we're looking on tonight is COVID-19, with the implication whereby it seems like it is not going away, and what many people are saying is that it is actually going to be something with us for a while. Dr. David Burton was just updating us as to the whole thing with Leicester. Carry on, David. Yes.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing before you guys could feed in is really the planned reopening of services. So July 4th marks another step in regards to reopening. We know that pubs and bars, restaurants, those sort of thing, are going to be opening up, and so we just need to watch this space. We need to be sensible. We need to make sure that we don't crowd these areas out, and that leads to further increases in cases as well. So I think those are the top three things that I'd like to feed back. Really, that there are a myriad of other things that have occurred over the course of time, but I think keeping us up to date, or keeping people up to date with regards to the COVID issues, those are the top three.
Keima and Keisha, what's your thoughts? I mean, were you guys in the mode to really get out of this lockdown thing, out of isolation? Do you feel like things are actually turning back around, where we're going easing back into lockdown, or we're easing out of lockdown? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think we are easing out of lockdown, and I think we've been in lockdown for some time now. I think over 3 months, and so the reality is we now need to look to mitigating the situation as much as possible. And I believe it's time, and I think the government is actually doing the right thing, which is actually beginning to open up the economy, opening up the norms. Now, I mean, I think it's about also putting things in place, measures in place to ensure that we can manage the risk to avoid any increase of the pandemic again, or a second wave, as what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And so, some governments, made it mandatory for. Hello.
No, keep talking. Keep talking.
Some government may have made it mandatory for people to wear face masks and when they're going out. And I would appreciate David's thought on that point. Also, the government is continuing to say that if you can work from home, you should work from home. And I think that's going to be a long-term expectations from employment from employers. And so there are things that we need to put in place to ensure we can continue to get on with and get out there and carry on, get back to work. This is the time, but we just need to put measures in place to ensure that we can actually do it. But I'm just thinking about maybe making it mandatory for with masking or PPEs.
Yeah, Keisha, what's your thoughts on that?
Keima.
Oh, Keima. Sorry.
You're getting us mixed up.
One. That's one.
That's one. You get strike one, Silver. Strike one.
Yeah. Well, my thought is simple. The government, and I'm with the government on this, we've been on lockdown for a long time, and I think the government have tried its best to try to contain the virus and having everyone quarantine and stay at home for such a long time. But I think, of course, where you now have to, or the government has to measure up the implications and the implications and the impact it is on jobs and the economy. They need to make a realistic assumptions and sort of decision as to getting people back to work and not just back to work, but safely as well. So doing so, of course, is going to be a challenge because people are going to be now mixing with, more people are going to be in large crowds. And of course, there's a risk that this pandemic could increase later on, particularly as we're seeing what's happening in Leicester. But for me, what's striking me now in the list of areas in particular that the government has listed as at high risk, a lot of them are areas that are ethnic minorities, high number of them live in those particular areas. And I'm not quite sure, having seen some of the statistics about or Black and ethnic minorities, how much we've suffered as a result of COVID, what the government is trying to do to combat that. Also, I've heard particularly there's a potential vaccination where we on that as well. These are the kind of things that I think we need to be talking about and try to understand how that could help in terms of combating the rise and potentially in the future. But trying to avoid the political side of it as well. One of the things I've observed as well from the list of regions named, a lot of them are in my understanding are Labour wards as well. So I don't know how much that is as well as an implication to all of this.
One of the things that I was looking at, David, is for argument's sake, Leicester. Leicester is on lockdown at the present moment. And you said, hang on a second, there was no demonstrations in Leicester. If one could say, okay, there was a demonstration in Leicester. If you're seeing a spike in London, one would say, okay, naturally, because of course, there was this massive demonstration. And then it dawned on me and said, hang on a second, when people come to London to demonstrate, they don't normally are from London only, they're coming from all over. Do you think that, because I understand Enfield, somebody messaged me and said Enfield is on a list of potential places to lockdown. I believe there's a list of different places.
Well, this is the thing. So let's touch on a couple of points. Let's first answer Keisha's question about the masks. My feeling on the masks, and I've said this several occasions, I think we've got to be smart and sensible and obviously follow government advice. In terms of wearing masks within buildings, I think you've got to reason that with how busy the building is. So what I mean is if you're in a very empty space with not very much contact with people, it's akin to walking outside, just from a common sense point of view. And what I'm saying here isn't based on fact; it's just based on opinion here in this regard. But if you're not coming into contact with people, then wearing a mask doesn't particularly make sense for me.
Yeah.
So I've seen people driving around, for example, wearing a mask on.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody in your car. This doesn't make particular sense. And whilst I don't think there's a detrimental effect by wearing a mask, I don't think it's the healthiest thing for us to be doing. We want fresh air, populating our lungs. So wearing a mask when you need to wear the mask is the first thing.
Yes.
Advice from the government is obviously to be wearing masks whilst on public transportation, and in hospital environments as well. All our patients are asked to wear masks, as well as all of the people in the hospital. And I think that makes perfect sense because it's a high risk area. Whether you wear it inside a shopping department or supermarket, I think if you're moving and you have good airflow, then I particularly don't see a concern. However, wearing a face covering is not a particular issue. You don't have to wear a full face mask. You can wear a scarf or something that's protecting the face. But obviously, hand hygiene, etc., is going to be key and essential. There may well be a move in future for us all to wear masks, but we just have to follow the government advice. Silborn, I think, in terms of the question about how movement of people, I guess, this may not be anything connected to the demonstrations that's occurred, in London. This is just par for the course. There's going to be a structure, a hierarchy of places that will be affected from high to low. And in fact, in terms of infectivity cases, Leicester itself is not the highest place regionally in the UK. There are other places, but when you take into effect the starting point and the population at large, then they've deemed as areas to not be at risk areas. In terms of the population at large, Leicester's been deemed to be that at risk. Now, in terms of this list that is potentially going wrong, I can't comment on the list that you've seen, but I think there is a reflection here that a lot of the information that initially came out in regards to potential cities that are at risk has now been sort of squashed a little bit. So the next worst performing city, as I said at the top of the show, is Bradford. And Bradford they were not looking to shut Bradford down at all. The press releases that have come out of Bradford have not been negative in that light. It's just to say that they are the next worst performing city in terms of the number of cases. Yeah. So I don't want things to think, oh my God, Bradford's now going to be shut down. And then there's Rochdale or all these other cities that have been named in the press. What I'm trying to say here is they've not reached that threshold, and that we have to just watch to see what happens in regards to the progression and the number of cases over time. But you're always going to have a hierarchy, a number of cities on a list or watch list because of the fact that you have to have from 1 to 350 or whatever it is, how many cities are in the UK. You have to have a watch list. But I don't want people listening today to think, oh my goodness, there are the numbers 2 to 10 are going to have big issues. And I think that the press reporting is responsible for the worry and anxiety that has following the initial issues surrounding Leicester. And I think that's an unfortunate circumstance that the press hasn't reported it in the manner that I think we need to hear. That being said, obviously Public Health England and the government are worried enough that we need to have the same kind of energy to reduce the risk of people increasing the cases, so that people, again, down the line are affected to a greater extent, by making sure we put out the required information to protect people. So hand washing, face masks, etc. Obeying social distancing or physical distancing is the key.
So I guess what we're saying is that we got to stay alert, control the virus, and what is it? What's the third one?
That's a
Save
very
lives.
save lives. You have to throw save lives in there. But respect.
Come on, guys, stabilize.
It is.
Stay alert.
Stay alert.
Control the virus
And save lives. Yeah.
You said stabilize. Somebody said stabilize.
No, you're missing that now. You're on strike 2, Silborn, man. You're on strike 2. Something's not quite right with the headphone technology there.
It's interesting because I guess we got to be very cautious now regarding the whole thing, and as I said, stay alert, control the virus, and save lives. Jobs. It is something which seems to be happening, isn't it, guys? Lots of jobs seem to be going. I mean, I'm just reading here. Where is it? Is it Cafe Rouge? owner falls into administration. 91 sites will close immediately with a loss of around 1,900 jobs. Now, listen, when I came to the UK, I used to work in Pizza Express. I used to be a waiter manager. And then the manager that was with me at that time, he moved over to Cafe Rouge. And I was working in Cafe Rouge at a certain point. What can I say for my coming to the UK? So yeah, I've been there. Cafe Rouge. Guys, what do you think about this job things now, this job implementation? Keima, Keisha.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, Sil. There's quite a few organization or companies that have announced that there will be job losses. And sadly, as you rightly say, Cafe Rouge and Bella Italia, the aviation company, even an aviation company as well, Airbus, and even today, John Lewis. So quite a few have made that announcement. The reality is, I suppose it was inevitable that this was going to happen. I suppose, at the moment we are now relying on, the government for direction and guidance. So the government they're very much creative at this stage. You hear the Prime Minister announcement the other day, which is, to build. So there's an expectation that they'll be investing a lot into the private sector, which is a construction industry.
Yes.
And owners, basically anybody who actually own a business, there are loans available and grants available for them that they can actually look to. But it will. I suppose it was inevitable that this was going to happen. I think this is a time for us as people to look at where we're at the risk. To be more creative, even innovative in terms of what we can do to survive or get through this. It's not going to be an easy time, but I'm sure we will all get through this. We just have to actually just have a plan and progress through that.
So what we're talking about is people have to now be creative with job opportunities and everything like that at this time, because one of the things that they were saying is that even the creative industry, that is like actors, performers, they're actually saying now that the government need to actually chip in, not just for the artists, but for those people who work in theaters and all those places. But the question is, how sustainable can that be, guys? And Keima, sorry, can we get it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yes. So for me, as Keisha mentioned, it was inevitable that this was going to happen. We know the Chancellor had put in the furlough scheme, which is well renowned around the world, the job retention scheme, which a lot of companies has benefited from, and that sort of sustained a lot of jobs for a while. And now where it's going to be flexible from the end of July, from July to October, where employers are going to be able to take advantage of people going back to work on a part-time basis. So it's going to be a little bit more flexible. But I think companies now are able to look at the current jobs that they've got in the workplace and think to themselves, well, a lot of people have been on furlough for a long time. Do we really need so many people back in the office? Do we really need these jobs? So they'll be reviewing that. So it's likely that a lot of people are going to be made redundant, and we sort of anticipated that's what's going to happen. So it's going to be a very difficult uphill battle for some people in terms of job retention. And also for employers as well, they're going to be looking at how to restructure the companies. Now you've got a lot of health and safety rules and legislations that they need to adhere to as well. So obviously it's not going to be to the number of people they will be able to hold in the workplace. So they need to review all of that as well. So that sort of thing will impact on jobs in the workplace. But also innovation is a big thing. As we know, a lot of the jobs that have been lost are in the retail and aviation sector. And so we know those industries in particular needs to be a lot more innovative in terms of how they capture and entice customers back again. Where people have been at home, a lot of them have been relying on Amazon delivery now. So companies that haven't been online and capitalized that obviously would have been affected the most, and that's what's happening now, where we've heard this before, where we have landlords, and particularly rent for businesses are
Yeah.
extortionate now, and companies are having to review their contracts and the terms around that. So it's a little bit of a uphill battle for a lot of people, financially as well, but also for companies. So companies who haven't been able to adjust and become flexible and quick thinking or innovation, they will suffer as a brunt of this. But I've always been optimistic around these situations, because I think now is the right time for people who have the bright ideas to come out and try and come up with some ideas and create businesses, create innovation, because it's always in these difficult circumstances that we've got some really good ideas.
Yeah. David, what do you think about this whole job thing now? Because we've been on this for a while, with the whole lockdown. People are now actually easing themselves back into the workforce. Many people are actually lost their job. They're trying to retrain and everything, and it's like there's no end in sight at this moment, as we can see. What's
Yeah.
your
I mean,
thoughts?
it's a really difficult time to sort of to sort of have that transition from being furloughed to then potentially losing your job and have your all the dependency placed at the foot of maybe astute saving that you may well have done over this time. And I do think people have done that. A lot of reports have suggested that people have been paying down on credit cards. People have been trying to save effectively. So it really has brought the core of the value of sort of how you look out for the future to the head. And I do share Keima's sort of optimism in that regard, in that people become industrious and people will be able to sort of reinvent themselves. And I think we've done this as people across the board over many generations to try and essentially be better at what we do, be better at how we do things and how we progress and how we perform. So essentially, I think that's basically what my thoughts are in terms of loss of jobs. I think that jobs will be recreated in some way, shape, or form to allow people to sort of embark on different careers. But how quickly that will manifest itself is the question. We look across at the States today, record numbers of increases in jobs. So we know that it's possible. We just have to be resolute about the situation. Be resolute about the situation we're finding ourselves in, and just power on and go forward with it. And
if we have touched on the COVID-19, and we recognize what is happening now, and people need to stay alert, control the virus, and also save lives. As I know, following I've seen, and I'm putting up this topic here, and what is very interesting now is this: Hong Kong, 3 million to get British citizenship. And won't that have an impact? I don't know, want to lead on that bit there, because it follows through. Because where I'm coming from is that, hey, the job issue is a serious thing. Europe with Brexit, Europeans are not coming back to the UK now. So people are saying, okay, we're going to get some more jobs now. And then because of what is happening in Hong Kong, the government is saying 3 million of you can come to the UK now. We still have that relationship with you because we were the governor. We controlled with Chris Patten, who was a former governor. Won't this be more devastating, in a sense, for Brits?
Who wants to start? It's an interesting one. Okay, so I don't mind starting on this.
Yeah.
So I think that what's being offered here is visas. If you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
What we've got to think about two things here. First thing is that the visas allow entrance into this country. But if we're offering citizenship, we've got to look at what that affords people in Hong Kong, because it doesn't necessarily flow that all 3 million of these persons will want to come to the UK. Yeah. It may well just allow them protection in the country that they live in Hong Kong. And so from that point of view, in terms of the feeling of oppression, it may make the the persons who do apply for citizenship, etc., feel a little bit more protected in their country, and so that might make things a little bit different for them. But let's then roll forward and roll to persons who may all want to come to this country. The idea of citizenship doesn't mean that you'll get citizenship straight away.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a prolonged period of time.
They're all citizens. They all got British passports.
No, they're British. No, they're British national overseas character.
Yes.
But so once they come here, they can convert it into British citizens, British passport. So they kind of not quite the same, but
it's not quite the same. No.
Yeah, so, like in the Caribbean, some overseas territory have British overseas territories passport. Yes. But they have to come here first before they get British.
And it's a period of time that they have to be here for before you can embark on that journey.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I don't know that you're going to get I don't think that you're going to get a whole bunch of persons from Hong Kong coming across here to work, live, compete with jobs with other persons within this country. But so I think that what's afforded for these people, and I don't think it's really something that's been talked about here, is an element of protection in Hong Kong under and I'm not commentating on the Chinese Hong Kong element here, but there seems to suggest this angst between the two, and so the level of protection, I think, is what's been afforded to these nationals.
If I just pick up before I'm going to Keima or Keisha, James Singleton mentioned that the situation shows that the whole system of pay, and this is related to the whole COVID bit there and the whole implication of jobs, the whole system of pay needs revising in the country. Get rid of minimum wage, but have a pay structure that rewards productive work that produces good results. Business can't afford the current system. Is it that Keisha, because you work in this area of development and these sort of strategy, do you think that one of the ways forward with the UK is the way of how the pay structure is and the way how they think with jobs and that, because with minimum wage and all those sort of things, people are saying these things are unsustainable?
I'd rather pass that over to Keima. That sounds like a HR question than an international development question.
Well, to be honest, a lot of companies are moving away anyway from the minimum wage. They're moving away more to the living wage, which is a reasonable, I think, most particularly the big companies, is a reasonable wage to pay for pay companies.
Yes.
It's a reasonable wage to pay individuals, and so when you do a lot of the audits for a lot of companies, the living wage is satisfactory from that point of view. So I don't think the wage is potentially an issue in itself. I think where the jobs are in the manufacturing, I just think we need to be building more, making more things. I think prior to COVID, in some ways, we've been focusing more heavily on the service sector.
Yeah.
But obviously, because now we've got Brexit to think about, now obviously staffing levels, creativity and all of that. Now we need to be factoring all of this now before in terms of how we move forward, and companies are going to be looking at all the different changes that they'll need to be making on that.
Mm-hmm. And then going back to Hong Kong, and do you see that, because without a doubt, with what is happening in Hong Kong and the level of demonstration there, I mean, there's going to be an influx, if anything, or they're going to tear down the place with all the umbrellas.
Well, I mean, it does give the people of Hong Kong access to Britain, and I think that's the most important point here. That there's about 3 million people who are entitled to British citizenship if that's what they want. And then the irony is that we've just dealt with Brexit, or we're almost at the end of Brexit. And so the whole point of Brexit was to reduce the number of immigration into the country. And also to manage or to change the approach, which is of course free movement of people, and have a mean tested approach as to who can come and who cannot come. And then I understand that there's about over 6 million European citizens So you have 6 million European citizens who, I believe that they still have to. There are questions around their status in this country. And then there's about 3 million people from Hong Kong who are eligible to come here and become have a pathway to become British citizens. So I mean, I think there's an irony here in terms of in one hand we want to manage immigration, on the other hand we say no, we can't manage immigration. The reality is it's free movement of people it will always be. As we can see here, it's difficult to manage something like this. But then you have to look at the wider scope of it as well. So it's not just the in and out of who can come and who cannot come, but it's actually what that implication that would actually have on people living in this country. And then it's only a matter of time before we have conversation around, as I think as you touched on Sil earlier, housing issue again. Number of people, healthcare, people having access to healthcare, that people having access to the educational system, and or even in the workplace, who's more likely to actually get the jobs now, and there was that conversation a few years ago when you come with the European accessing certain jobs, and other people here who've been living here longer can have access to those are not getting those opportunities. And so there's possibility that there's that conversation that will be had. And in terms of the decision that the government made, I think it's a good decision. I think it's absolutely right for they to open their doors for people of Hong Kong to come here and to actually have access to the opportunities that we have in this country. But there's a wider opportunity for conversation around it.
David, for years, what has been happening is that Black people in this country came and they're part of the Windrush factor, and they came to the nurses, the hospitals, the train, bus drivers and everything. They had the shops, they got the sweet shops, and now you're not seeing the Black community, in a sense, having this economical base. When you had the Africans came, the Asians came, everybody else came, and somewhat we find Black people are not up there at that level. Now, with this other influx, if anything, will that have an impact on the Black community? Because, will there be an impact with jobs?
I'm not necessarily sure that.
I'm not saying you can know everything, but I'm just analyzing this in a way,
I don't think necessarily there's going to be an impact on Black people, selectively Black people in this regard. Not at all. I think that if there are jobs to be had, then everybody gets a fair pick of that job. So you're all applicable. You all apply for the job if you got the credentials, and then perform in the interview. But I take the point in that if you have more people in this country from outside of the country, it will impact the accessibility for people who are already in this country. But I think that we live in a kind of a free market economy, and so that's what happens. People, businesses are able to pick the cream of the crop. If you were to think about sort of from a brain drain perspective, from the Caribbean, people coming across from Jamaica, for example, and working in the UK, that's sucking the lifeblood, you could argue, out of the Caribbean and out of Jamaica. But people evolve, people can progress, and I think that healthy competition is always a good thing because it can drive people forward. I'm not arguing for free immigration across all borders for all populations here, but at the same time, what I'm saying is that from answering your question, I think that in terms of the Black community, I'm not a voice or spokesperson for the Black community, but what I'm saying here is that we are in a sort of champion. And if you want to aspire, you want to achieve, you want to go on and do great things, then you really got to dig deep and try and do that from a personal point of view. Yes, you need the support of family. Yes, you need the support of society at large, but also you need to have that inner drive and determination.
Any final word on that bit there regarding Hong Kong?
Well, for me personally, I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, from an objective point of view, how it's all been pictured and how it's been pitched, and it's very much, it's a good thing and it's a right decision. But for me, where the government has made this decision now for people from Hong Kong to be able to have the right to citizenship so easily, I'm just questioning why, for the Windrush generation, it has taken such a long time for them to, in my view, is just, if a group of people come here and invest a lot, build this country, work on the buses, work on the NHS, why don't you just give them an amnesty? I mean, I think with all the long reviews and debates that we've had to have, I think it's just completely unnecessary. And for a small proportion of people, and then you have, on one hand, we have to go through all that. The Windrush generation have to go through all that. And then on the other hand, the government would come out and say, well, you know what? People from Hong Kong could get citizenship. So for me, I'm questioning the narrative and the reasoning behind and how quickly they've come to such a decision.
If I ask this question, then you're actually making a similar comparison with Hong Kong and the Caribbean. Would you put them on the same level?
Not necessarily. For me, I just think it's obviously two different scenarios, two different cases here. But I'm thinking where they've made that decision for people from Hong Kong to be able to come here, become British citizens. We know for a fact that people from the Windrush generation has worked here, invested their time, paid their taxes for such a long time, but they've had to go through such a demoralizing process, humiliating process, and still having to struggle to just become British citizens. And I just think it's just in some ways it just shows a bit of a unfair process here. I just think somebody could just use some sort of common sense when they're looking at this and think, why can't you just give them a bit of an amnesty? It's not many, but I'm not sure it's 3 million people.
So I guess what I'm picking up from you right there is that
the inequality.
Is having a level of fairness, and I agree as well. Boris Johnson, before, when he was mayor, I believe when he was mayor, spoke very profoundly about amnesty for persons in this country, and of course bringing them out of the cold definitely will also boost the tax, because many people, of course, is on the ground.
Yeah.
And many people are still on the ground as well. And rightly, as you say, for the Windrush generation, even though someone will argue and say not all people are from the Windrush generation in the sense that came on the vote factor, because that is dealing with, as Joe Aldred was saying a week ago when he was on the show. So I believe that is something which definitely is worth thinking about. But the most important thing I say, and as David said as well, is that Black people need to be very astute as well at this time, because Black business matters. I just changed the corner. Black jobs matters, But listen, another thing also which was on the scene today is we saw Priti Patel, and there's this massive I think over 700 raids or so, or over 700 people which have been arrested for all of these things which is happening. I think Keima or Keisha can lead on that particular topic there.
Yes, absolutely. So Priti Patel have been in the news today. She's had a very positive day. So she was joined with the National Crime Agency.
So when you say a positive day, has she been having some negative days?
Well, yes, I suppose I'll touch on that a bit, maybe in a few minutes or so. But today is a good day for her, I suppose. She was on the ground. She was on the ground today. With the National Crime Agency. Yeah. Great pictures of her, witnessing a raid. One of the biggest in the UK. It's claiming in the news, where they seized 54 million in cash, which is brilliant stuff. 77 firearms, 1,800 rounds of ammunition, 4 grenades, 55 high-value cars, 2 tons of drugs. I mean, it's just brilliant news opportunity or PR opportunity for her in the news today. So and it's good on them, because it's promoting the government agenda, which is toughen crime and toughen the causes of crime. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing about stiffer sentences and long-term sentences, and everyone's going to feel the full force of the law. These are the languages we're about to. If we haven't started hearing it today, we're going to be hearing it in the next few days. And so, so she's been, I think she had a very good day today. In terms of negative, she has, her negative press. Yes. A few weeks ago, clearly Black Lives Matter. She made certain statements, which I personally feel was not in line with or the spirit of what Black Lives Matter was about. So, she what is it? Gaslighting the Labour Party, one of the Labour Party representative MPs, dismissed her experience or the issues around Black Lives Matter. She was quite dismissive. And so language and her tone there was not, to me, a great portrayal of somebody who is an ethnic minority. But I think she has redeemed herself to a certain extent today by actually demonstrating that she is tough and tough on crime. She'll definitely stir up a conservative base. I mean, I think this is what they'd love to see.
David.
Yeah, so I think
she's stirring up your base, yeah?
She's stirring. I got multiple bases, multiple bases. So I think I agreed largely with what Keisha says there. There's nothing I disagree with. She's had a terrible testing time. I think with regards to the Black Matter issue, and so I call it laughter because it was laughable. Some of the comments that were coming out around the time, and the politicization of this whole thing as well was really off-putting because it took away from the actual motives of, I think, the demonstrations. In any case, today, for sure, I think it's obviously positive news for the UK. What it shows is that even in these testing times surrounding COVID, that the police force and wider sort of surveillance is at the forefront of the UK. That essentially, these crime gangs have had a proportion. We don't know how big a proportion this is. That's the other thing. So 54 million sounds great, and it's great. And I'm not going to say it's not great, but we don't know what kind of proportion that is in relative to the amount of criminal activity that's going down. And the other big thing I don't know if Keisha did touch on was the technology.
Oh, yes.
It's been broken into in regards to mobile phones. That's huge because it means that they've got the criminals are always trying to be one step ahead. Obviously, that's what they need to do in order to do what they do. But I think by infiltrating that and bringing that network down, again, it's the British police have to be applauded for that. And I think in these times to applaud the police sometimes sounds a little bit strange, but honestly, I think that's the right thing to do. And I would never hesitate in applauding the police and trying to protect and serve the community at large. And I'm glad that they've done this. And I think it's fantastic.
But isn't this also saying all these things with mobile phones, WhatsApp, all this encrypted thing? I say to people all the while, listen, man, just forget about this privacy thing. It's nothing private when these guys want to I don't think about you, as much as possible, because all these guys were actually thinking that everything was going okay while the police were actually eavesdropping on their deals and all those sort of things. The key thing which you guys mentioned as well, but before I go further, ladies and gentlemen on Instagram, thank you so much for joining. I'm with Dr. Burton, Keisha Allen and Keima Allen as we look at some key topics. Unfortunately, you can't see on Silver TV. And for those who are here, please share the video as well as we're on the last leg. I keep hearing this thing about it's a positive day. Is it that the UK now is looking for some sort of bounce? And is this a sort of bounce in the sense of crime, whereby we're clamping down on crime, right? We know the difficulty has been with the police recently, as David said, kudos for the police. Is it positive, really?
For me, I think it's positive all around. Yes. I think it gives the Conservative particularly a good image, a really good PR for them. They're comfortable talking about law and order. That is the safe ground. Racism and anti-discrimination is simply just not a ground that they're able to talk comfortably about. So moving the conversations away from Black Lives Matter to law and order, I think it's really positive from their point of view. But for me, I think it's a good day because when we talk a lot about crime, particularly in the Black community, a lot of times we talk about black on black crime, knife crime. And for me, I think a lot of times we've missed the bigger picture here. I see those boys who go around killing one another on the streets. A lot of it is motivated from, higher levels within, in my view, the drug and criminal activity. So to me, going after the big fishes, which I think it is, it sends a really, really strong message.
Yes.
And I think that's where the government need to be targeting, because what these boys do, the knife and crime, it's to me, it's all sort of a cycle and an impact of drugs and I think the government has to be tougher. If we're really, really serious in reducing the levels of crime within our community, we need a tough government to do that. And I think the Conservative government is doing that, and they've got it right. So I think where they've got it right, we need to say so.
Fantastic. Okay, well, the Conservative got it right. The government got it right. They say you vote out the government, you get the government in. That's it. Vote out the government, you get the government in.
They got it. They got it right on this single issue. It is not generalized here.
We're getting political. I think that the other thing that makes me smile about this is that we've really taken a degree of positivity, because the positivity really does matter. And I think Priti Patel did allude to the fact that she was not standing for in face of COVID for people being opportunistic in the criminal world, and that was back in April. So obviously she was aware that these activities were in the offing, that the police were going to be making these arrests, etc. In due course. I think the timings helped government for sure. Given what's happened with the BLM movement, etc., and the fallout from that. So I think I've got to speak on the positivity. It's a good day. We're tasking on crime. That can never be a bad thing.
So somebody said one of the police officers or one of the top guys were saying, you'll be surprised of your neighbors. Many people are going to be surprised when they see there's a neighbor who's in his underwear or something like that. You're going to be surprised with your neighbors as to what is happening next door to you. That's very interesting. Yeah. But I want to ask this last question before I go, because this has been in the topic so much, and this is not something which I wanted to spring on you. Are you guys BAME? No, I say that. I had a friend which I had on the book. Her name is Bishop in the States. And she said, what's BAME? Are you a BAME? I was so annoying me. That's why I put a post and said, listen, man, I'm no BAME, man. I'm a proud black man. BAME. Are you guys David? Are you a BAME?
Am I a BAME? I was trying to think of a really good analogy while you were talking there. You sprung me. So I am David Burton. That's who I am. And I think it's a tricky situation to sort of task this problem in itself. Categorization of people. You walk into any GP surgery, you've got to tick the box to see which box you fill in, and there are reasons and rationale for that. From data collection purposes, to sort of trying to change and shape particular services. I get it, but I don't particularly like the terminology. But it's there. I'm not going to be, annoyed any more than that. But the BAME doesn't like. I don't like BAME. I'm going to come up with something quite unique for BAME for myself.
So are you a BAME? Are you a BAME?
I'm a Burton. David Burton. Until I find my roots all the way back. But I'm a David Burton.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm always on Facebook and YouTube. Are you a BAME? Okay, I'm not going to ask you about race or anything. Are you a BAME? BAME. Keisha, are you a BAME?
Well, no. I mean, I suppose I don't have a choice with that. I suppose as David said, you go to you apply for a job. You go through the NHS. You have to complete these forms. You only have a few boxes to tick. You don't have much of a choice. So for them, I guess I am a BAME. For me, I'm just an African Caribbean woman. So, and I'm very content with that. I understand the reason why they want to cluster all ethnic minorities into one box, just to tick the box, especially if you're, they need to have a certain a number of quotas, how many people actually on the board, how many people in the employment and all that. and they just say, okay, ethnic minority, we've got 2 here in this department, 1 in that department, 1 on the board, and they satisfy that. So they have to satisfy the BAME requirement. That is fine. For them, it's okay. For me, I'm just content being African, Black, African Caribbean.
Keisha, Keima. 3
Gee,
strikes.
All right. This is the 3rd strike.
You're out, boy.
That's it.
He's
That's
out
it.
here.
That's it. That's
Three
it.
strikes. You're like, over.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I agree with David and Keisha on this one. You really we haven't got a choice. I don't know. I think institutions they create these names for us because, of course, they need to categorize us, and they need to tick a couple of boxes, and they need to say that how many number of people, Black people working or ethnic minorities work in a particular organization, and making sure that they're doing keep records of that they're doing what they're supposed to do. So I don't think it suits a lot of Black and ethnic minorities. I think it's best that it's all separated, because then the resources and the help will be more targeted to the particular communities, and it doesn't get lost in the BAME tag. But also, if it's Black, then of course, if where we have, particularly in the education and the healthcare, where Black people are falling behind, we could target those support, particularly for Black people, and obviously for Asian and separate. They've got separate issues on that. So I just think it just clumber all of us together, which is not it's not very helpful.
On that morning in 1992, as I came off that plane and I landed in the UK, I found out that I was actually in all these different categories. Before, I was always being Silburn, Jamaican, Majority of people I saw around were all Black people. See some tourists and so on, all white people, they all look the same, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, all these different boxes was and all these different categories. And then when I heard the word ethnic minority, I started to think of these aisles, Sainsbury aisle, Tesco aisle, the ethnic aisle. It is relegated in the backside of the desert to a certain extent. And I believe when I listen to it more, I believe that it has if someone hasn't got a strong spirit and a sense of purpose, it can have a sort of effect on them psychologically, I believe. But I don't understand the principles of why they do it that way and bringing everybody together. But the worst thing, as somebody said a while ago, is that you bring all these people together and they don't all think the same. And sometimes they don't even like themselves, but you put them together. So therefore, in a local authority or in some organization, they said, you've got to make sure you're diverse. Got a Chinese guy there. Got it. Bang.
Got it. Boxing exercise, that's it.
Yeah. You got a Jew there. Bang.
Yeah.
And therefore, and the Black people are saying, hey, there's no Black people there. No. Bang.
So I've got it now. I've got it now, Symbol. I've got it. So it's a work in progress. I'm culturally active. I'm culturally aware.
Working it out.
I've been working it out. I'm culturally aware. I understand, my background, etc. I am BAME. I'm Black and mentally effective. There you go. I'm BAME.
Yeah.
I've decided tonight I am definitely BAME.
Yeah.
Thank you for enlightening me, man.
Yeah. I need to type that in. BAME.
Me
Yeah,
too.
BAME.
I like that.
I've coined the term tonight, this evening.
I can see that on a t-shirt. Still, can we not get
Black.
that?
Black
Can we
and
not get it on
mentally
a t-shirt?
effective.
Sorry,
I think so.
Black and
Mentally effective.
okay. Because it came on the Silburn show, and that's where it happened.
Copywritten.
I got to write it.
Copywritten. Oh
Black
boy.
and mentally effective. I'm blocking
There you
up pictures. Came on space, so let me move it away. Black
There you
and
go.
mentally effective. Love that, David. There you are. You get it. You
Thank
get
you.
it already.
Thank
Also,
you.
many one people. Someone said no BAME. Tick all. This person said then said no BAME. She tick everything. One people. When you get to this country, you then know who you are. Love that, David. David, you made it, man. You have made it. You're the.
I said t-shirts coming. Don't worry, the t-shirts coming.
if you shout, you're aggressive. Shout, you're aggressive. Well, I think then BAME as a positive, black and mentally effective. That is really positive. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have heard, black and mentally effective. We got the new term for BAME, so people can always any last word, guys, before we wrap up? What do you think for what's your prognosis, if anything, as the easing? There are two things: easing of the lockdown or easing back into lockdown. How do you? I'll let David finish it off, but I asked Keima and Keisha first.
No, I think it's a positive. I think, the country's been on lockdown for some time now, and people are egging to get out there, get back to work. And so I think that what the government is trying to do, all the initiatives that they're putting in place, I think once people stick to the safety rules and safety regulations, we'll be fine. But I think it's just it's time for everybody to get back to work and get back out there.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think it's the lockdown was an opportunity for all of us or everyone to reflect and re-examine their life, what they want to do, what their purpose is. And I think that we've got 3 months to do that, and I think it's time now to get out there and get back to work and be innovative and productive. So the time has come to implement.
Well, I've always been working. I never. I think I should be getting some. I found out when my boss said to me, actually, Silver, you are actually on the front line because you deal with children in childcare law. So when the people start to clap on my streets, I start to walk and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I still do not use the letter which I said I could use. I felt a bit bad using the letter, to walk into supermarket as well. But it was good getting the applause. But I think it was the last 2 days. I think it was the last day when they said it was pretty. I said, "Oh shucks, man, I got to get this one." Thank you.
It's a good feeling, isn't it? Just coming out and get. But David, I'm sure you experienced that a lot, didn't you? Every Thursday.
Yeah, that's
well, the Thursday clapping. Yeah, it was nice for the community. I didn't step in the streets. I'm a quiet, reserved person more often than not. But I was very thankful. I think that there was that support. And in terms of my crystal ball prediction, I think that we'll have, unfortunately, not many, but a few of these localized lockdowns. I think once we gather more information in regards to COVID in itself and how it affects us, because we've had 6 months of this condition now. We've got good information, good data, but we'll learn more as we progress. I would hope that we'll be able to reduce the restrictions that are currently being employed in a sensible, logical manner. But I think before we get to that point, we're going to have more of these lockdowns regionally or locally, and I hope they are few and far between.
And that's really correct as well, David. We believe that somehow, as a guy in Jamaica said, I think he was in one of those depressed areas, and he was selling, and he said, "Listen, social distancing is for rich people, if I social distance, I die, because I can't get no food and stuff like that. So either COVID kill me or I die of hunger. So you know what?
Yeah.
I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's true. And I must say, at the same time, commending places like Jamaica for the great work
sure.
that you're doing as well.
For sure.
And that is why, David and guys, that is why I always question this bit here about that COVID affect BAME more. You know what I'm saying? Black and minority ethnic more. I still have that sort of check in my spirit, because I'm not touch wood, I'm not saying I want it to happen, but why is it not affecting the Black Africans and Caribbean that much? And it's there.
Yeah, for me, still, I'm with you. I'm always, I'm skeptical about that. I mean, I think where we probably need to be looking at who's at the front line. I think a lot of Black and ethnic minorities are the bus drivers, they're the nurses, they're the doctors.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who, of course, are putting themselves in position where they're more likely to catch the virus. I don't think it's necessarily because they're the ones who are going out there partying, or the ones who, not adhering to the safety measures. And I think, the conversations aren't really around that. And it's more about all Black and ethnic minorities who are more likely to get it. But there need to be more transparency around who are really doing the low skill jobs, or the jobs that, many people don't want to do, or the jobs that are putting their lives at risk.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, guys, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to ask you this question. I booked you in, guys, again to do this again. I didn't tell you what date yet. I think this is good. I think this is cool, isn't it? Isn't it cool?
Well,
I think it's even better when you get the names correct, though, Sil.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Just saying. Just saying.
It's either Keisha or Keima. All right? And I'm pointing at them. That's Keisha and that's Keima. All right? That's Keisha, that's Keima. Right? And David, I know these guys for years and they play tricks on me at the same time.
That's good.
They've been for years. You know what I mean? So today I was talking to Keima and I was thinking, Keisha, yeah, didn't you do that last week? No. I was, oh no, you're Keima. You know, but listen, that's where I think we should do this some more often and grab some topics. I think it's very enlightening and get people to contribute as well.
But let's hear what your audience have to say. Do they like us?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, do you like them? Did you want to really do that?
Maybe not, because they're very honest, aren't they?
People are on their sofas, you know what I mean, and they're serious, man. I'm some comments sometimes, you know what I mean. A guy said to me today when he saw me doing this walk in the morning, you know, bam, bam. He said, I need to talk to you, man. Are you all right? he said, I know you and you're an intelligent guy, but as you walking, I said, are you all right? You know what I mean? It is so interesting, you know what I mean?
Well, next time you see him, Sil, you can tell him that you're black and mentally effective.
You just need the shirt. And you need to get the shirt.
That's it. Just point to the shirt and you're all good.
All right, well, listen, here's the verdict so far. Can you see that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one. Okay, here's another one.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
And James, don't worry, you're part of this. We're gonna get you in, man. You know, we've got diversity, James. You know, but listen, tomorrow night, guys, listen, at 9:00, I have this gentleman here, a young guy that I mentor. He's now 20, and guess what he was doing during the whole demonstration? Virtual demonstration, guys. Edward, virtual demonstration. Have you heard of that?
Never.
Do you want to know what I'm going to tell you?
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Virtual demonstration.
Oh dear.
Cyber demonstration. I mean, he sent me some good videos. This is powerful. These are the young people engaging out there. You know, that's why it's called Youth Connection. Listen, man, I'm millennial, black, millennial, and effective. I messed up, baby. Strike 4.
Yeah, strike 4. And on that note,
yeah. Well, on that note, we're gonna go. We had some plans before to jump over on Instagram at another time, but it's late in the day. Doctor has got to go to deal with getting himself out, and you know, I've asked Mrs. Burton, if it was okay. She said yes. I got 5 minutes. I just got a message there. Keisha, I think you guys give me 5 minutes as well. I think your husband just sent something. Both of you, yes. You know? So guys, without further ado, thank you so much, guys, for coming, Keisha, Keima, and David, and the guests and the co-guest persons on the side. Thank you so much, Dan, Murray, James, Modine, and different persons on Instagram as well. Guys, thank you so much for coming. You know, watch your show on the replay. As a matter of fact, I'll just maybe have a quick chat with you guys after on Instagram since they're there. I just, you know, if you want to come over to Instagram, I'm there. Silburn TV, you know, guys. I'm going to the next round, man. Drop mic. Bye.
Bye.
Listen, okay, so take care, guys, and let's do this again.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, this is Thursday. I don't know. Maybe we could try to do this on a Thursdays as well. I'll ask the guys them, and James is coming over on Instagram. All right. So peace out.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Thank you, guys, ladies and gentlemen. See you around. Remember to like and subscribe to Silburn Show, and peace out. Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks.